Thank you for joining NMH at 1, where we highlight the news making headlines in the land of the brave and beyond, ranging from current affairs to community stories, sports and economic news. In the news today, state agrees to bail for Comalie. The union claims nepotism and tribalism at NUST. Salaries gobble up 80% of the education budget. I am Ashwin Berry and this is NMH at 1. Joseph Shivute, who is accused of physically assaulting his 15-year-old niece earlier this month at Oneuptwo village in the Oshikoto region before putting a chain around her neck and fastening it with a padlock, received a sentence of 4 years and 5 months in the Ondangwa Magistrates Court yesterday. Remember to engage with these stories on our social media throughout the broadcast. Visual news coming up after the break.
Africa Good Morning is a current affairs program that brings you the latest from Southern Africa and beyond. News, economics, sport, weather, interviews, and so much more. For any advertising or news-related queries, contact agm@synergy.com.na. Africa Good Morning, bringing Africa to you.
Heading into the visual news, Liberty Life actuary Nyasha Masimbe says Namibia has made great strides in fighting the HIV and AIDS pandemic as death rates have declined significantly going into the 2010s. Masimbe also highlighted the low uptake of insurance products in Namibia due to the high costs involved. Jemima Birkus reports.
Gender-based violence, again, is a testament to that pressure that we had. Very unfortunate, but I think, we've seen an increase in that as a result of the pandemic. Unemployment rates have gone up slightly. And I think just generally looking at the economy, when we came out of the pandemic, we all anticipated recovery. But I think that has been retarded quite significantly. There's been geopolitical tensions, vis-a-vis wars in Europe, and I think, battling just generally. So I think our recovery hasn't really kicked off as quickly as we would have liked. And there's a lot of uncertainty. The economic scene is quite eccentric at the moment, but my colleagues are applying further on that, so it's still a very difficult time that we find ourselves in. If we look at the Namibian market, just at a glance, I think the GDP has been quite stable. Growth a bit low. And the one thing that surprises me is for such a vast and massive country, the population just doesn't grow. So maybe I think we might need to find an alternative to the STD. But we still remain a very small nation. Employment rates are quite low, just about 30%. And if you look at the population splits, roughly 60% of our population are in urban areas, with the balance in the rural landscape. We do have quite high internet access, with more than half the population having access to the internet. Social media usage has picked up quite a lot. In terms of just the industry as a whole, our insurance penetration is just over 10%, which means that the scope to grow that a lot more. Roughly 60% of that is on the non-life side, and 40% is on the life side. One of the reasons why I do think that this might be a challenge is I think there's really a low uptick in insurance products. And I think the narrative is more around pricing, a lack of understanding of what products are. But I do think that in time, there are opportunities to kind of reach out to more people, such as a microinsurance, which is a lot simpler.
The ambassador of the European Union to Namibia, Sinika Antela, stated that a technical team is busy designing a fully digital and publicly acceptable online bill-checking system in collaboration with Namibia's National Assembly, which she says will contribute to legislative efficiency and transparency of parliamentary work once tested and launched. Now, she said this during the Namibia and Estonia Symposium on Digital Transformation, which took place today, hosted by the Ministry of Information, Communication and Technology. Esther Comalie reports.
The European Union and some of our member states are complementing its support to digitalization in Africa through a large-scale regional program benefiting sub-Saharan Africa in the domain of data governance. The program will support the African Union Commission, regional economic communities, as well as EU member states in developing data policy frameworks, building on EU data policy framework. It will address in a strategic and comprehensive manner all the potential around how data can be leveraged for the update of the digital economy. In line with African Union Continental Data Policy Framework. It will support policy and regulation at continental, regional and national level, promote access, use and sharing of data across borders, data use investments in data infrastructure and services in selected regions in Africa for the emergence of harmonized data economies. This will ultimately serve the development of a single digital market, where data can flow across borders, personal data are protected, and local private sector can leverage data value chains on a basis of convergent regulation, thus avoiding silos, single markets within the region. Dear partners, ladies and gentlemen, while the European Union is strongly engaged in digitalization and e-governance globally and regionally, we have also horizontally mainstreamed digitalization in our bilateral development cooperation with Namibia. Under our EDF 11 Enhancing Participatory Development in Namibia program, the technical assistance team is currently busy designing a fully digital and publicly accessible online bill tracking system in collaboration with the Namibian Parliament and the National Assembly. This e-governance tool will, once it is tested and launched, significantly contribute to legislative efficiency and likewise to accessibility and transparency of parliamentary work for the benefit of the Namibian public.
A massive 13.8 billion of the 16.7 billion Namibian dollars allocated to the Education Ministry will end up in the pockets of its employees. An update on this story follows in the newspaper review segment. Stay with us.
Flex is your health and fitness show that focuses on the health of the mind, body and spirit. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact zone@synergy.com.na.
Heading into the newspaper review, Namibian Sun's front page reports that about 80% of the Education Ministry's budget is allocated towards personnel expenditure. With an increase in learner enrollment of over 40,000 learners this year, this means more teachers will need to be hired and is set to further increase the wage bill. The ministry has been allocated a budget of more than 16.7 billion Namibian dollars, which constitutes about 22.5% of the national budget. On page 3, the Education Ministry will, as a matter of urgency, construct 510 classrooms countrywide to accommodate the growing number of learners. Expected to be completed before the end of the year, the classrooms are, however, a mere drop in the bucket. In her budget motivation for 2023-2024 financial year, Minister Anangi Pondoka said the ministry continues to battle a massive backlog in education infrastructure. It is estimated that 4,479 permanent classrooms are needed. Republican informs that Namibia's sprinting sensations Christine Boma and Beatrice Masilingi received the keys to their donated 3-bedroom houses in Rundu this week. However, the properties are still without electricity, while the land on which the houses are built has yet to be transferred into their names. On page 3, the management of the National Housing Enterprise has offered striking employees 5,000 Namibian dollars as a once-off payment as part of efforts to end the nearly month-long strike. The entity also offered to issue loans to its employees involved in the strike and affected by its condition of no work, no pay. On its front page, the Allgemeine Zeitung today focuses on the fact that the right to freedom of assembly seems to be under threat worldwide. But this is only one of many worrying human rights trends, as Amnesty International's new annual report shows. The organization has published its annual report and has expressed its concern about the numerous hotspots around the globe. According to Secretary General Agnes Callamard, Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine has further exacerbated the energy and food crisis. On page 3, the Allgemeine Zeitung sheds light on the fact that the closing arguments were presented by the attorneys of the 2 accused in the Shannon Wassaford trial. They were heard in the Windhoek High Court on Tuesday morning, but the fate of the accused is not expected to be known until May. Stay with us as we continue with the Namibian newspaper in our newspaper review.
Take a load off and tune into another episode of Brave Namibia, as we take a look at both ordinary and extraordinary Namibians. Brave Namibia is broadcasted on NTV Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. and Oneuptwo.com, as well as broadcasted on the following Facebook platforms on Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Republican, Allgemeine Zeitung, Namibian Sun, and all Namibia Media Holdings pages. For more information, contact the Brave team at brave@synergy.com.na. Brave Namibia, for the ordinary and extraordinary Namibians.
Continuing with the newspaper review, the Namibian newspaper reports that the National Petroleum Corporation of Namibia board chairperson Jennifer Comalie was granted bail in the amount of 7,000 Namibian dollars when she appeared in the Windhoek Magistrates Court after normal court hours yesterday. Comalie appeared before Magistrate Josan Clarkson about half an hour after the court's normal time of 5 p.m. after prosecutors at the court waited all afternoon to receive instructions on her case from the Prosecutor General's office. On page 3, the hopes of hundreds of unemployed people who flocked to Omawalu fishing at Walvish Bay to apply for jobs were quickly dashed on Monday. Jonas Ngenokesho and a banking graduate were one of those who arrived at the gates of Omulau fishing as early as 6:30 a.m. but were unable to get the curriculum vitae to the recruiters. We were in the lines and they told us to throw our CVs through the gate on the ground. We had no choice but to follow the instructions, he said. Now on to New Era. It is reported on page 1 that the Namibia Public Workers has called for an urgent intervention by the Namibia University of Science and Technology and Higher Education Ministry in the affairs of the public university after damning allegations of corruption, abuse of power and nepotism surfaced. In a letter addressed to the NUST Council Chairperson Florette Nakusera, NAPU General Secretary Petrus Nevonga raises an alarm on a multitude of serious allegations. On page 3, Namibia cemented itself as a force to be reckoned with as a country took first step to making green hydrogen production a reality. The country on Monday afternoon launched the first phase of the Daures Green Hydrogen Village in the shadows of Brandberg Mountains. On to Market Watch. Load shedding in South Africa is causing trade disruptions both from the demand and supply sides. The value of Namibia's imports from South Africa is on a downward trend, according to data provided by the Namibia Statistics Agency. The value of imports from South Africa declined from 3.6 billion Namibian dollars in January 2023 to 4.4 billion Namibian dollars recording in December 2022. Now, Botswana tests De Beers deal. More on this story in economic news shortly.
Active Kids is an initiative under the MyZone brand that aims to provide exciting and easy activities and fun stories. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact zone@synergy.com.na. Active Kids, where we actively invest in your future.
Botswana will acquire a 24% stake in Belgian gem trader HB Antwerp in a deal that could challenge the Southern African nation's 50-year partnership with De Beers. As part of the agreement announced by President Mokgweetsi Masisi on Monday, Botswana's state gem trader Okavango Diamond Co. will receive polished rather than rough prices over a 5-year supply deal with HB Antwerp for some of its sales. The new approach could potentially generate more revenue for the government than De Beers' traditional method of selling rough, uncut and unpolished stones. De Beers and Botswana jointly own Debswana, which mines almost all of the diamonds in the country, the world's #1 producer by value. In February, Masisi told a rally of his supporters that Botswana wants a larger share of the revenue from the venture with De Beers. It currently gets 80% of sales total when taxes and other charges are included. Let's head into the economic indicators. The Namibian dollar not doing too well next to the euro, US dollar and Chinese yuan, maintaining its value next to the British pound, but trading at 18.18 next to the US dollar. More stocks managed to maintain their values, Lesego Holdings going 2.7 upwards. Both the local and overall index closed up 0.32% and 1.56% respectively. Looking at commodities, gold, copper and zinc all managed to make upticks, whilst Brent crude oil made a downturn of 0.21%. Botswana's government has dismissed claims that it plans to arrest and kill exiled former president. More in News from Africa after the break.
The Regional Review brings you news, views and interviews from NMH correspondents from across the country. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact regional@synergy.com.na.
Heading into news stemming from the African continent, Botswana's government has dismissed claims that it plans to arrest and kill exiled former President Ian Khama if he returns home. In an interview last week, Khama told AFP news agency that he had information about plans to arrest and poison him upon arriving home from South Africa, where he has been exiled since 2021. He claimed the Botswana government fears his influence ahead of next year's general elections. But in a statement on Tuesday, Communication Permanent Secretary William Sensabeng dismissed Khama's claims as outrageous and unfortunate. We regard the claims as politically motivated and with the sole intention of tarnishing the good image of Botswana and her government, Sensabeng said. With elections due next year, Khama has vowed to dethrone his hand-picked successor Mokgweetsi Masisi, now a bitter rival whom he accuses of being a threat to democracy. Khama said he was preparing to return home to join with other parties to ensure that Masisi and his party lose the elections. The former leader said he has undergone a full medical check and updated his will because he was almost certain that within days of arriving he will be arrested. The 70-year-old Khama, a former senior military officer, governed one of Africa's top diamond-producing nations for a decade until 2018 before handing the reins to Masisi, who was then his deputy. Lesotho's parliament is expected on Wednesday to discuss a motion on the reclamation of some parts of South Africa. An opposition MP wants legislators to declare the whole of the Free State, parts of the Northern Cape, parts of the Eastern Cape, parts of Mpumalanga, and parts of KwaZulu-Natal as part of Lesotho's territory, according to Parliament's order paper. It says the reclamation will be pursued under the United Nations Resolution 1817 that was passed by the General Assembly in December 1962. Historically, Lesotho people were found in South Africa's Orange Free State, Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, Mpumalanga, and parts of KwaZulu-Natal, but they were forced to move to present-day Lesotho because of migration during wars. Let's head into international news, starting with Germany. Germany's constitutional court ruled today that a law declaring marriages entered into by children under the age of 16 outside of Germany illegal must be amended. The law must include regulations allowing the marriage to be declared valid once the individual in question has reached adulthood, as well as rules on alimony payments, the court said in a statement. The law must be amended by June 30, 2024 to bring it in line with the constitution, it added. The case relates to a Syrian couple whose marriage was declared invalid upon their arrival in Germany as refugees. The then 14-year-old girl had married a man 7 years her senior in a Sharia court in Syria in 2015. After arriving in Germany, the teen was separated from her husband and placed in a facility for female refugees. Now, King Charles travels to Germany on Wednesday today on his first state visit abroad since becoming the British monarch as part of his efforts to turn the page on years of rocky relations between Britain and the European Union after its exit from the bloc. Charles, who succeeded his mother Queen Elizabeth as the British monarch in September, had been due to travel first to France but cancelled that part of the tour due to violent social unrest over President Emmanuel Macron's new pension law. During his 3-day visit to Germany's capital, Berlin, the eastern state of Brandenburg and northern port of Hamburg, Charles will address issues facing both countries, such as sustainability and the Ukraine crisis, as well as commemorate the past, according to Buckingham Palace. On Wednesday morning, German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier will greet Charles and his wife, Queen Consort Camilla, with military honors at Berlin's most famous landmark, the Brandenburg Gate, a symbol of the country's division during the Cold War and subsequent reunification. Now, Steinmeier said it was an important European gesture that Charles had chosen France and Germany for his first state visit, even before his coronation in May. On Thursday in Berlin, Charles will address the German lower house of parliament, the Bundestag, which he last addressed in 2020 as Prince of Wales, and meet some of the 1 million Ukrainians that have taken refuge from the war in Germany. Now, the brave Warriors played very well yesterday. We'll be talking about that as we head into local sport after the break.
The Agenda is a weekly national affairs interview program hosted every Sunday by Namibian Sun editor Toyvon Jabela, featuring a panel of high-profile newsmakers, analysts, and experts. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact agenda@synergy.com.na. The Agenda, focused on today's conversation.
The brave Warriors of Namibia played to an impressive 2-1 win against Cameroon in the second leg of the Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers. With this result, CAF reports that Namibia, together with hosts Ivory Coast, Morocco, Algeria, South Africa and Senegal, have qualified for next year's competition. Namibian cyclist Farah Lusa says being crowned 2023 Absa Cape Epic winner alongside her Mauritanian teammate Kim Lecourt is a massive achievement and marks a big moment in her career. Lusa and her teammates were on Sunday crowned overall winners of the female category after completing 648 kilometers of cycling. More than 1,100 learners from 11 Namibian schools, as well as 3 schools from South Africa and Zimbabwe, who participate in the 9th edition of the Indoko Toyota Desert Sports Festival from 29 March to 1 April in Walvish Bay. The games start today. Now we'll be heading into international sports shortly, starting with South African Paralympic champion Oscar Pistorius, who might be released from prison. South African Paralympic champion Oscar Pistorius might be released from prison this week, a decade after he killed his girlfriend in a crime that gripped the world. A parole board is to decide whether Pistorius should be let out early after a hearing in Pretoria on Friday. The board must determine whether the purpose of imprisonment has been served, said Department of Correctional Services spokesman Singabako Comalie. New Zealand winger Salaries will miss the Rugby World Cup after it was revealed on Wednesday that a serious knee injury will sideline him for the rest of the year. Super Rugby franchise Crusaders said Rees needs surgery on the knee ligament he ruptured in their recent win over the Blues. Now, the fact that the University of Pretoria has been stunningly relegated to the Varsity Shield with a round to play is not a reflection of where the Blue Bulls Rugby Union is at the moment. That's the word from former UJ and Wits coach Hugo van Aas, who joined the Bulls Currie Cup coaching team this season and has had a torrid start. Stay with NMH at 1, especially if you're just joining us, because your highlights follow through after the break.
Kom kuier gerus elke Vrydag aand saam met Arjougar, waar hy vooruitskouing doen van wat op die sportvelde reg oor die wêreld gaan plaasvind. Daar word op die naweek se top internasionale sportgeleenthede gefokus en plaaslike sport in Namibië asook Suid-Afrika word in oënskou geneem. Die kenners praat saam en huidige asook oud spelers gee hul mening en ons hoor grootlik sommer uit die spreekwoordelike perd se bek. Niemand weet met sekerheid wat die naweek op die sportveld gaan gebeur nie, maar iemand weet wel watter faktore die uitslae kan beïnvloed. Ons praat met daardie iemand wat weet, en soms word geheim ook uitgelaat. Vrydaande is ons in die tonnel gereed om uit te draf. Dit is jou Vrydag afspraak wat jou ingelig gaan hou alvordat die spelers uit die tonnel opdraf. Sport is ons passie. Sien jou in die tonnel.
Let's head into the highlights from this afternoon's broadcast. Botswana's government has dismissed claims that it plans to arrest and kill exiled former President Ian Seretse-Khama if he returns home. Germany's constitutional court ruled today that a law declaring marriages entered into by children under the age of 16 outside of Germany illegal must be amended. More than 1,100 learners from 11 Namibian schools, as well as 3 schools from South Africa and Zimbabwe, will participate in the 9th edition of the Indongo Toyota Desert Sports Festival from 29 March to 1 April in Walvish Bay. The games start today. Those have been your highlights. Remember to tune in every weekday at 1 p.m. to spend your lunch hour with NMH at 1, catching up on the latest news in Namibia, Africa, and the world, ranging from current affairs to economic news, sports, and international headlines. It's goodbye from us in studio. See you tomorrow.